equal rights and equity, dignity and honor, flows like water that will never stop. So we will rise for truth and justice, the voice of God and not the law.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the program House of Justice. My name is Gloria Ballison, your legal diva. On House of Justice on this 8th day of October 2020, we take a look at the topic Special Anti-Robbery Squad and Criminal Justice Element. As you would know, there has been great agitation around the issue of SARS, to do away with it or not to do away with it. And we thought that it was important to have this forum. So this is beyond just another episode of the program. This is really about dissecting the issue from all the different angles. And so we took the time to go all the way to get a Deputy Inspector General, or Deputy Inspector General of the Nigerian Police Force. I'm glad that this afternoon we can be joined by DIG Godwin Chijioke Nwobodo, retired. DIG Nwobodo has a first degree in biochemistry, and he's a lawyer and was called to the Nigerian bar. He also has an MSc in legal criminology and another MSc in security psychology, as well as in strategic studies. He is a fellow of the National Defense College. And until last year, when he retired, he was the head of ICT of the Nigeria Police Force. It's good to have you in House of Justice, DIG Nwobodo. Hello, do you hear me, sir? I guess you may need to unmute. So if you check at the bottom of your phone at the left-hand side, you'll find the button to unmute, and so we'll be glad to join you. So while he joins us, yeah, hello. All right, while that is being done, I would also be joined by Mr. Stanley Ibe. He is a lawyer, an international development professional who has experience in advocacy, coalition building, and police reforms. And so we're glad to be joined this evening in this conversation by Mr. Stanley Ibe. Good evening, Mr. Stanley Ibe.
Good evening, Gloria. Good evening, Nigeria.
Thank you very much for joining us. And right here in the studio, I have a researcher at the Nigeria Defense Academy on policing behavior, on police behavior, actually. And I am very delighted to be joined by Mr. Benga Oba.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm also joined by a lawyer and a public affairs analyst here in Kaduna, Shehu Sani Esquire. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So, do we have DIG Nwobodo now? Hello, sir. I can see him, but I think that in the nature of connectivity, I think he's trying to get around it. But if you can hear me, sir, we would need for you to unmute. And then I saw you a while ago, but then you disappeared. But I'm sure that you get around it. Many Nigerians, Stanley Ibe, are agitating for the dissolution of the police unit called Sars. Why do you think that is so?
Well, I guess it's because of what we've seen on our screens over the last couple of weeks. The violations, the killings, the general public mistrust in that unit. And I'd like to say, actually, that in my view, the most important ingredient any policing service requires to succeed is the public trust.
Yeah.
Because if you have the public trust, you can get people calling in, whether anonymously or directly, to say, this is what's going on here, you've got to do this. You can have people actually advocate for you to say, you know, we think the police needs X, Y, Z, and all of that. Once you destroy public trust, you destroy everything. So at the heart of the problem that SARS has at the moment, I think, is complete loss of public trust.
Oh, okay. Benga, the issue of public trust.
Yes.
I am aware that you were involved in a research in which you tried to have a sense of what Nigerians think about the Nigerian police force in general, and I guess SARS in particular. What are some of your findings as regards public trust?
Well, one of the profound discovery we made in the course of that study is the fact that the Nigerian people who were supposed to be protected by the police force, or who are said to be a friend of the police, because we are told police is your friend, have zero or little or no trust for people who are supposed to protect them. And that is why it will interest you to know that an average Nigerian does not trust a policeman, whether in or out of uniform. And it's because of the age-long corruption, brutality, and a lot of things, ill things that they commit against the people. We'll talk about the human rights violations and then extortion. And when someone says, when police tells you this is black, and if you tell a policeman this is white, and this is black, then you know that there's no confidence in the police system, which is rather a very sad story.
I won't let you get away with that. From the feedback, it's also true, I guess, to say that when people are faced with any kind of problem, the first line of call, the first set of people that they want to call is
The police. Yes.
So if the public confidence is so low against the police, why would they want to call the police when they're in trouble?
Well, some wouldn't even want to call the police because part of I wish with time we'll be able to share the discovery of our study. We have a lot of questionnaires. Part of that questionnaire is, have you ever called upon a police or police when you are in trouble? And out of close to about 5,000 responses that we had, and it will interest you to know that majority of people who called on police were either told that police couldn't be there, they hadn't fuel, or they were not able to get through to police. So most time people don't even bother to call upon police because one, when you call on police, it takes time, the time of response for them to get to your rescue. You rather resolve to self-help or find a way of helping yourself. So it's with time we're going to share our discovery, but it will interest you to know that majority of people don't even bother calling on police. Police is not in Nigeria today. When you have a problem, a critical problem, the next person to call, people can decide to call on God rather than calling on police, which is okay. And it's rather it's in a system where government fail to what government is supposed to provide, people begin to look for either people who believed in people who are religious, what they're supposed to get from government, they tend to get from their religious settings. So people categorically say to me that, or in that research, in that study, a survey, that I will never call on Nigerian police. And we're not talking about 20%, we're not talking about 30%, we're talking about over 50 to 60% responses as regard whether or not you have confidence in police force when you are in trouble.
Let's see if DIG Wobodu has joined us. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Aha.
Hello.
Yes, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. Thank you for joining us. All right, I just wanted to be sure that we are connected. And just before I get to you, I'll just speak with Shehu Sani Sani Shehu in the studio. Apparently, you're going to be a senator, it seems to me.
God wills it. I will.
All right, but you have just listened to Benga speak of how people would rather call on God, even though it's not a bad thing, as he said,
Yeah, I
than they'll
understand.
call on the police. So they would. Does that sound like it's a despondency? The police cannot come for us, so let's cry out to God.
Well, it's a two-way thing. Yes, in one aspect, and no in the other aspect. Yes, because a lot of times when you call the police, like he said, they will tell you that they have challenges that will militate them from responding to your call. But no, in the sense that we all live within the society, and we can't be oblivious to the fact that sometimes, even without calling the police, they do go on certain patrol,
Patrol.
and they do get to, no matter how minute it is, they do get to prevent or forestall crime within the society. So yes, people don't have confidence, so to say, in the police, and no, in the sense that a lot of people in some aspect, they don't even want the police to even come to them. A lot of people don't even know where they can even reach the police, how they can even reach the police. We may be living in the city, but when you go to the villages, rural communities, they don't see the police, they don't have the police close to them to even call. And even if they know where to reach the police, probably before they can even reach the police, and even if the police will come, it may be too late.
Well, DIG, sir, you've just heard a feedback from Nigerians on what they think about the police. Would you say that the police is being maligned, or that the police is taking up a thankless job?
Well, I suppose both of them. I suppose police sometimes is outrightly maligned, or we're doing a thankless job. For example, let me come from my community. My community did not have a police station up until up until recently. And some of the elites in my community got together to put some money, brought some money, and built a police station. Bought them a vehicle, and also even started leveraging on their contacts within the police cycle, or with the police cycle, to get them some of the equipment that they need. I don't think that looks like a group of people that do not have confidence in the police. Certainly, and this is replicated. This is replicated all over many communities in Nigeria. I have been, in the course of my career, I served as a national police officer in so many places, and even outstations as I was growing up. And sometimes you get to begin to wonder where people come up with these studies that they bandy all over the whole place, that police is the loss of confidence in police. Yes, certainly. Even all over the world, even in the places where their system work, you wouldn't say that that the police enjoys 100% confidence. We saw what happened in the U.S. recently, that led to the Black Lives Matter demonstrations all over U.S. So there is no crime in the world where police enjoys 100% confidence. But I think a majority of our people will still rather call the police when they have problems. Maybe some might not want to call, but some might not call police out of not knowing exactly what to do, or out of a lack of ignorance. But policemen in this country are doing a yeoman's job, no doubt about that.
Now, I'll move to reform in a short while, and that will be to Stanley. But Benga, can you tell us some of your findings? Because I think it's important for the DIG to get the feedback of what Nigerians are saying about the police, and more specifically about the Special Anti-Robbery Squad.
All right, thank you so much, man. Well, with the SARS or FSARS, the way it's been reformed or whatever it is that the name suggests, we you realize that a lot of the perceptions that the citizens has about um, SARS, it is not what you can take to the bank. It's a poor public relation. Whether we like it or not, whether people want to support police or they don't want to support police, perception is critical, especially when it comes from the citizens, people whom you are supposed to protect. And when we talk about people whom you're supposed to protect, most of the things that the report that international agency like Amnesty International and all of that have against the SARS is boils down to the harassment of youth between the ages of 18 and 35. And so when we discover that this is where the problem is, so we threw out a survey, and people who fill those survey where it's a digital survey, and then part of it was also one-on-one. Part of people, one of our discovery is the fact that people don't trust SARS, and people do not trust them. Why? When we ask them, do you have confidence in police or SARS fighting a crime? Larger percentage of response was no. So what then do they do? What you get from people is they extort people, and I think it's not just about being defensive. We need to look into the cause. SARS is just a fruit out of the big tree of Nigerian police. There's a culture in Nigerian police. There's a psychology of an average police personnel, and so SARS is not the big issue. The people who comes to SARS were first and foremost policemen. They were recruited. That was a process of recruitment. That was a process of training, orientation, and retraining before they even get into that point. So I believe whatever we see SARS doing today, SARS is just a fruit. Just like you have what feed the fruit, or how a tree produces the fruit is based on the nutrient it gets from the root or whatever it is. So for people to have public confidence in federal SARS or SARS, federal anti-robbery, special anti-robbery squad, IRT, all of these tactical units, the police authority needs to be deliberate about the police management style. I think with time, when we are moving to solutions, we'll get up to that. But for SARS, the public's perception about SARS is poor. And the police, people who are doing perception management, I don't know if there's a team, there's a group, maybe the PRO or whatever the team that do perception management about policing, they should look critical into that. With time, we will share the findings of our study with them, and they will be, if they would like to have a view and see where and when to improve. Thank you.
Stanley Ibe, you're involved in police reform, not just in Nigeria, but in many African countries. And this is something you do over and over again. What are some areas of critical reforms in the Nigerian police force? Hello, Stanley?
Yeah. So if I go back to the initial point, I think let's
Stanley
be fair.
Ibe, can you hear us, please?
Yes, I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you now.
So if I go back to my first point, and I said, let's just be clear. So we've got, according to the UNFPA, 201 million people in Nigeria. And we've got probably a little over 300,000 police officers. So you have a police to citizen ratio of 1 to 700. Now, that's already very, very problematic, right? Yeah. If you look at the budget, it's a huge joke. None of that justifies what's going on. And let's be clear, There are bad guys in SARS, and there are good guys in SARS, like every institution, including journalism. And for the colleague there who is a lawyer, including law, there are bad guys and there are good guys. But you've got to create, there's something called incentive. You've got to create incentive for people to do right. If the incentives are strong enough, people will do right even when they don't want to, or they will do wrong and face the consequence. It's so important. So we've got to rebuild the trust with the community. The first point I made was the trust has eroded, and the police cannot do its work unless it has public trust. So we've got to try and rebuild that. One way to begin that process is make accountability matter. Banish the idea of impunity. Because the thing that makes, I mean, you see videos where people essentially tell you, I will shoot you and nothing will happen. If I remember correctly, I think it was Human Rights Watch that published a whole report that had that title. You know, I'll shoot you and nothing will happen. The idea that people think there is not enough incentive to comply with existing laws is part of the challenge. And in rebuilding that trust, we've got to make clear examples of officers who don't do what they should do. Accountability has got to matter. And I'm aware the police has got an internal mechanism for accountability. And there's the external mechanism. And the external mechanism could be anywhere from the Police Service Commission to the National Human Rights Commission to the oversight committees in the National Assembly. All of those institutions have got to work. They've got to work together. You see, look, you've got to get to a point where if as a police officer you violate the law, you can be sure that you serve the term. Now, if people know that, they will be encouraged to report. Because part of the problem, and you know, we are in this thing together, part of the problem is you tell people, you know, if your rights are violated, talk to X, talk to Y. The big question is, so if I talk to X and Y, what next? Now, it's not enough to say, oh, we heard your complaint, we'll treat it. What happened to that case? What happened to those cases? I think it's important that we deal with that. Now, just to be clear, I mean, SARS has been there since 1992, if my research is correct. And it was set up to address a specific issue. So Colonel Ringham, I think that's his name at the time, was killed by police officers at some checkpoint in Lagos. And following that, police officers disappeared from the streets, and you know, they set up this SARS thing to try and focus on robbery. And then kidnapping got into it, and then violent crimes got into it. Do we still have robberies in Nigeria today? Yes. Do we still have kidnapping in Nigeria today? Yes. Do we have violent crimes? Yes. So is there a need for police to take care of those crimes? Absolutely, yes. But we've got to create incentives for citizens to help the police to do their job, and for citizens to feel confident if their rights are violated, people will be punished.
All right, let's talk to DIG. You have heard Stanley Ibe and Benga and Shehu right here in the studio. And one of the issues that came out clearly is that there's a need for erring policemen, any police who does the crime, to do the time. Is there an effective mechanism in the Nigerian police force for checking the excesses of its agents?
Most certainly, yes. The police has a disciplinary procedure, both for officers and for men, the rank and file. The rank and file, of course, if you breach any code or the breach discipline, you are tried in what we call a room, and of course, if you are found guilty, you will serve the necessary punishment. It could range from dismissal to reduction in rank and such sundry punishment. Ditto for even senior officers. There is no organization. In fact, the police is one of the organizations in this country that take the issue of discipline of officers and men very seriously. And people are dismissed on. I mean, every year we dismiss so many officers get dismissed. So many officers lose rank. So many officers even when you do what is wrong, what if you preach the law and you commit crime, that is what you have done amounts to a commission of crime. You will of course be tried, dismissed first, then you go, will proceed and try you as a civilian. Perhaps that's why people don't know that we take some of these issues seriously. Well, by the time a policeman who has committed murder is appearing in court, he's no longer a policeman at all. So that's one of the so we take this issue seriously. Can we do more? Yes, certainly. The police can still do more. The whole society is not built in a day. I believe that over time the police will continue to improve on the question of discipline of men. Now, talking about so much has been said about SARS, and it's from this SARS thing that we get up to talking about discipline. Now, SARS was set up to address specific problem, and that problem was the problem of robbery, the spread of robbery that we had in the country about that time, and of course other violent crimes. So SARS was set up to address, to be able to tackle this and they were given specific responsibility to address these issues. And I'm glad that the last speaker said that mentioned the fact that we still have robberies, we still have violent crime, we still have kidnapping, all these other sundry things that never used to happen have now come part of this crime problem that we have in Nigeria. So the relevance of SARS is still there. But I will agree that to some extent, members of the public have lost confidence in SARS. And I must be bold to say that we, the police force, my own constituency, yes, I'm retired, but I will always remain a policeman because this is an organization where I started for about 5 years. So that still remains my constituency. We, the police force or the Nigerian police force, there's a need to do something. We need to articulate in a very, very profound manner the issue of standard operating procedure for SARS, code of ethics, and above all, training and retraining. To the extent that when members of the public see them, they should be able to, their mere presence should engender confidence in the public. We have so many outfits. We have the mobile police force, police mobile force. We have the VIP protection. We have bomb disposal. We have the mounted troop, the dog section. We have so many. The police is like, in fact, the elephant that it used to represent. We do not represent police with elephant because because of lethargy or anything. We do that to show that sometimes it is from the angle that you look at the police that you actually see them. Sometimes the elephant is so big that sometimes it's the horn that attracts you. Then the other sometimes it's the tail and all that. But the issue is that there is SARS relevant. But I agree that we need to, do some work to make them more professional.
Now, thank you for being forthright with the issues. I need to echo the concerns of some people who have already put up the issues online around SARS. It seems now that SARS is the ultimate bulldog. So if someone, wants to catch someone and they don't know what to do, so they set SARS against you. And someone online was telling the story of how, his brother was picked up on the street and taken into SARS custody. People will have land issues and they will set SARS against whoever it is that they don't have. It seems like, oh, SARS is the magic bullet of how to do it and how to intimidate. We are all agreed about the fact that there are violent crimes. And if we want to really face the issues, it seems, sir, that the violent crimes have actually even escalated in the past few years. So with a unit like SARS, how is it that we have a rising tide of violent crimes?
Well, society over time becomes more sophisticated, and as they will become more sophisticated, unfortunately, there is also a rise in crime. Today, if you have, in those days, you hardly have, even in a year, you have one civil servant that is tried or arrested for embezzlement or for corruption. But today, the number of civil servants, as the number of civil servants that we have has multiplied, and the number has also increased. That have the tendency to do what is wrong. So, so, so it is just that society is becoming more sophisticated. More people have avenues to commit crime and all that. That does not mean that SARS has not been doing their work, or that the police have not been doing what they are doing. It is just that I will give you examples. I say, let us look at the simple case of statistics probability, where you have 10 red balls and only, or let me say, 80 black balls and only 10 white balls. Each time you do a lucky dip, the tendency that you will pick a black ball is almost 1, which is 0.8. So the tendency for Nigerians, the propensity for crime has also increased because of love of money, love of things, material things, which never used to be the case. It is not necessarily as a result of lack of performance, but as a result of the fact that even our society itself have not really addressed itself concerning some of these things. Look at, take for example, the highway robbery, home invasion robberies, highway robberies have reduced. Whether we want to agree or not, the reason is because of the cashless policy. People are not able to transfer. Traders who want to move from Kaduna to Lagos to buy goods can do a transfer of money. You can use your ATM to withdraw money. You can do banking on your telephone. That singular incident has addressed, that singular policy rather, has addressed home invasion robberies and highway robberies. People now, the robbers now even tend to believe that you are not likely to get money on the highway, or that if you go to people's houses, you will only buy them with the ATM card. And that is even what led to kidnapping. It was because that policy reduced home invasion robberies and highway robberies. That is why they now started to, steal human beings, so to say. Permit my language. Let's kidnap somebody. When we kidnap him, they will come and they will pay ransom, or we can take him to ATM somewhere and we'll withdraw his money. So it is a societal problem. It's something that we need to address. It's a social. We need to address poverty. We need to address all the things that affect crime, that tend to increase crime in society. It's not only police police is not the only factor when it comes to the whole issue of crime and crime control. What is the government also doing? What is the government doing to discourage crime? Like I just mentioned, one policy. And then if, for example, we come up with some other policies, we will have a tendency for reduction of crime. So it's not only police.
Shehu, you have listened to the last speaker. And one of the issues that many Nigerians have complained about is how SARS, seem to be everywhere, not just restricted to the issue of anti-robbery. What do you think are some of the fallouts from that?
Well, I think one of the major reasons why the SARS have not been able to stay within the bounds of crimes that have to do with robbery is because of the orientation of those officers of the SARS in the first place. You give them power, you don't give them a limit, nobody to look over their shoulders and all that. Of course, like it was said, think by Awolo, say power corrupts and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. You give them a lot of power. You have to put mechanism in place to check
and balance
those powers that you give them. SARS, they don't wear uniform. They go around. If they come to you, if they don't tell you they are SARS, you won't even know they are SARS. Unless if they put up the jacket that carries the name SARS and all that. You need to find a way around it so that people can be able to identify that, okay, these are SARS. SARS, what are you doing here? And you need to have somebody who is very firm, who can be able to control the activities of the SARS. Yes, a SARS officer is here. From the communique I read by the first PRO, detailing the directives of the Inspector General, he said they shouldn't just go out on patrol for the sake of going out on patrol, but that they should be going out only on call when they have cause to go out. Now, you know the number of SARS officers that are here. How do you checkmate to know that those exact same number are there at any given particular time? You need to be able to put mechanism in place to ensure that, okay, if you have 15 of them here, they are here. 15, they are here. Oh, we only have 10. Where are the remaining 5? Where have they gone? But none of that, even yet, in theory, the police have a book that at the counter they book and go. But I mean, I'm used to going to police formations, and I can't tell you that I've seen a particular instance where a superior officer will come down to look at that particular book at that particular time to know whether those people are there. Probably, maybe at the end of the day, take the book to the superior officer, and then he will check, okay, these people went out today, these people went out today, they have returned, all of them. But you need to go beyond that. You need to swing surprises. Check the register in the morning, check at intervals to see whether those officers are there. And then that way, you'll be able to create the impression in those officers that, look, it's no more business as usual. If I go out at any point in time, a roll call might just be taken, and what if I'm not at my
duty post?
So I feel when you do that, you can be able to curtail some of the excesses of these officers. But there are some other factors too, which I believe it's not just peculiar to the SARS alone. It's peculiar to all police officers. You have to look at their welfare. It's paramount.
Now let's talk about this welfare. does that justify a situation of the person who should be curtailing crime to be part of the crime?
Well, the way I understand it, welfare is something that has to do with one's psychology.
That's right.
If I'm not comfortable, I will. It's just a human instinct. I will try
Compromise.
to find a way to make myself comfortable, and it may be legal, it may be illegal, it may be lawful, it may be unlawful. So you need to go to the bottom of this problem. Why are these officers doing this? Why are they always doing this? What do they stand to get by doing this? If they go out, is it that there's a pecuniary benefit that they usually get? Or maybe it's just the energy in them that is pushing them to just go out and just let it out? Or you need to go to the bottom of these things. Yes, okay, it's possible when they go out, they come back with certain monetary or other benefits. Try and find a way to ensure that those things, are things that will not entice them to go out, and see whether they will go out.
Well, Stanley, you are involved in reforms, not just in Nigeria, police reforms, not just in Nigeria, but in many African countries. And Shehu here spoke about how the psyche and also the psychology of the police could be affected by their welfare. Now, what are some of your findings around reforms that needs to be addressed in the country?
Well, I suspect that most of the things we need to do about reforms we already have in the books. I'm not sure we have demonstrated sufficient political will to do the things that we need to do. I'll give you a simple example. Back in 2018, I'm sure everybody listening to me now probably remember the Tony Ojukwu presidential panel on Sars reform. Now, that panel concluded its work and passed on its report to the president. It will be interesting for the president to tell Nigerians what they have done in terms of implementing whatever the outcome of that report is. I don't know if you have seen it. I mean, apart from the statement Tony made at the time about recommending these people for prosecution and all of that, what were the specific recommendations in that? The panel's name is Presidential Panel on SARS Reform. By the way, in the last 5 years, we've had to ban or unban SARS 4 times. That tells you something.
And I
that tells you that, yes.
I should add, Stanley, that I appeared before that presidential panel, and I haven't received any information about the case that. So
this point you make is one of the other points I made before. Now, it's not enough to say that we've got a system to deal with police officers. Yeah, it's not enough. If I file a complaint with you, if you come to my office and you say, Stanley, this is what I want to do. If for any reason I cannot do it, I owe it to myself. And I owe it to the organization to get back to you to say, I cannot do it. I think that's the decent thing to do. Now, if you empaneled a commission, by whatever name, and it's not just the panel on SARS reform, there's been a number of panels on police reform as a whole in Nigeria. The Mandami police reform, and a lot of others like that. Where are those reports? At some point, there was a campaign by civil society to get these reports out and get government to do what they ought to do about them. Is that going on? I'm not sure. Now, just to be very clear, sometimes we create an expectation. If you go and report a crime, and sometimes it's not a crime, I don't like your face, I go to the police and I report that. Now, there is an expectation. You want the police to act. Yeah? And you want results. Sometimes you don't care about process. Now, when we make the argument that people have got to take rights seriously, the reason we make it is that rights are supposed to balance power.
Mm.
Make the weak exist concurrently with the strong. Otherwise, the strong will destroy the weak. So if you have a system where you say, oh, it doesn't matter, the guy is a poor guy, we can disappear him, nothing will happen and all of that, you create a system where anything goes. So you go and report this thing and you have an expectation. Sometimes people actually bribe police officers. I want result, go arrest them. Go keep them for police. Keep them for disappearance, all that kind of stuff. And so you ask yourself, the police that you have that expectation for or of, what are the tools you have provided for them to do their job? How many forensic laboratories do we have in this country? You've done some stuff on forensics. How many functional ballisticians do we have in the Nigerian police force? So what kind of expectations are we creating? And how are we matching those expectations with the resources we invest in the police? And just before coming on this program, I heard the chair of the Senate Committee on Police Affairs trying to compare the police budget to the budget of Operation Lafayette Dole. You know, it's crazy. So what are we investing in the police force? Now, does any of this justify violating rights? No. By the way, Nigeria is signatory to the Convention Against Torture. Nigeria has gone the further step of developing its own Anti-Torture Act of 2017. And we have a national implementing institution. There's a torture committee. So, and all of those create obligations and create expectations of Nigeria. The question is, are we meeting them? Do we care about these things?
And the answer would be?
Big no.
Well, let's look at certain factors. What does your own research say about drug use within the police sector?
All right. Like almost everyone who has spoken, apart from the DIG, because he's in his constituency. And so police, there's a culture, especially those special units. There's a culture in police that marries drugs with their activities. Now, part of what we realized was that on the average, out of every 10 police tactical unit member or personnel you see, you are sure of having between 8, there's no 0.5 human being, 8 on the lower bound use drugs. And all of these guys there's a place in somewhere along my area in Kaduna State here. They call it Black Street. And Black Street, in the course of my research, because we also go into correctional centers to know, about the issue of punishment and, stuff like that. We realized that Black Streets is a place where they sell drugs. And you could see policemen with their patrolling vehicle. Normally, I don't know what police act says about chemicals and uniform, but I know in the military that you can't be on uniform or be on duty and get into hard substances. You see them in their vehicle. Probably if someone goes to that particular venue now, you see them there. I'm not ruling out the fact that there are good policemen or, few ones. But out of 10 police tactical personnel member, you find out that 8 of them are into drugs, either whatever substance it is that you find, they take. And why do they do that? Someone whose sense of judgment is impaired. Alcohol impair your sense of reasoning or sense of judgment. When they see you, when you even talk about your right, they will tell you, and so what? It has been said that no one should be arrested or without a warrant. When you call somebody, okay, I want to arrest you, you ask for a warrant. Something happened, I belong to a particular community, and something happened, a young man wants to be arrested. And so because of our advocacy and about human rights and all of that. So he's been able to know a little bit of his rights. And so he said, where is the warrant of arrest? Could you believe on record that a policeman says in this Nigeria, you're talking about warrant? My friend, enter the car before I shoot your leg. It shouldn't be. We've been told if you want to detain someone for more than 24 hours, you need a court order to do so. And when the government of the day himself are flouting court orders, then what do you want the people who are supposed to bear the touch of law and order to do? And so the issue of drug is what I will enjoy police authority to look critically into. In a civilized country, I've been into some of those countries and I know how their police works. Every now and then there are drug tests. I wouldn't know if we have a forensic psychology unit or a forensic a psychotherapy unit in police. There's one close to us in Banao. Maybe after this program we'll work there and say who is the psychologist on duty, because these are human beings. We're talking about welfare. These people are part of the society, and society has a way of affecting people. The behavioral, we'll move into that when if time allows us. When you talk about the police management style, the managerial style, the behavioral style, and all of that, these are things that the authority should look into. When was the last time a policeman? There was a report. One of our mates, who is also a senior person in the police authority, was during the Northeast. I had the report on the media. A mopo, a police officer, locked himself in after he had shot few of his members after they were attacked because he was suffering from PTSD. How many post-traumatic
stress
disorder? How many of them have been taken care of? How, do we even have a psychiatric unit in police force? Is that, these are things that these are humans. They were first human before they become policemen. Now, the way every other citizens have goals, aspirations, and dreams are the way they also do. Because when we talk about welfare, we need to dig deep. You see, the issue of banning Sars, issuing statement by PPRO and all of that, when we're ready to deal with the issue, we go to the roots. When the foundation that produced the structure needs to be overhauled, and no thanks to the military, because the police force were not like this in the 60s. I wasn't born then in those days, but no thanks to the military, because police force was one of the strongest law enforcement units before the first military rules. It was a deliberate attempt by the power of the day then to turn the police force to what they are today. So we need to go back to the basis. And if we are doing, how many reforms have been done? Part of the reforms, police reform, was what created a Ministry of Police Affairs. It was an aftermath of a reform. It was after that we have Police Service Commission. And currently now, the issue of police has no right, Police Service Commission, PCSC has no right to recruit, this one has no right to recruit. And and house divided against itself, how can it stand? And so the issue of drugs, what is the emotional status of an average police personnel? When was the last time? Do they have a drug test mechanism? You see a policeman with uniform, with hard substances. How are they going to checkmate law? When someone who is supposed to be the custodian of law and order is drunk, is high on hard substances, his sense of right and wrongs are impaired. And so when people talks about, we need to put all of that in place. I'm particularly important. I'm interested in the psychotherapist of our police officer. Is there a unit? I have a lot of police stations around. I'm interested in police, and particularly in their behavioral attitude, because I belong to a school of thought that believes that things don't just happen for happening's sake. For every action, there's an opposite and equal reactions. So for things to happen, human beings are product of our environment, our circumstances, and our environment play a major role. So when we're talking about reforms, when the average policeman's interest is not taken care of, those who have been sent to Northeast, those who have been sent to all of these places, what the people who have PTSD, the people who have trauma amongst them, what have they done to them? Rather, they tell them, be strong. You are not you are too weak. They are human. We need to take a look at that seriously. Drugs and police is an issue that the authority needs to take a critical look at.
So we should turn to the DIG, the issue of drugs and the Nigerian police force. So when a Nigerian meets a police on the road, who exactly is he talking to? Is he talking with the police in his full senses, or is he talking to the police under the influence? Put in another way, what is the role of drugs, and what is the Nigerian police force dealing with in terms of drugs and its personnel? Hello? I think you may have muted. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yes, hello, sir.
Hello, I'm here.
All right, thank you.
I'm here.
Yes, so the question around drug use and the Nigerian police, what can you say about it?
Well, drug use is outlawed in the Nigerian police. Drug use is outlawed. You will define, well, see, people put up so many things. If, for example, out of
Hello? I think that we have lost him for a bit, but I guess that he will reconnect with us when connectivity improves. But it's important to get that bit of it out, the issue around drug use in the Nigerian police force, because that's important. But we might as well ask Stanley. Mr. Ibe, what have you found out so far in terms of drug use in the Nigerian police force?
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Well, I don't have data on drug use. Our colleague in the studio there seems to have data, but it makes a very compelling point. When things happen, sometimes don't just ask what happened. Also ask why did it happen and how did it happen? So it makes a point about post-traumatic stress disorder, for instance. And in my experience here, I have seen a couple of officers moved around a bit. They are moved to a new place. They don't have a home of their own. Some of them literally, get on the streets from wherever they can find. So the tendency is that when you meet such people on the beat, you don't want to speak big grammar to them because they're traumatized themselves. So that is a valid point, and we've got to think about it. I mean, I was talking before about our own style of police reform in Nigeria. There are several commissions that have looked into these issues. Can we begin with putting all those commission reports together and asking ourselves, how far have we come on these things? So one of the reports, for instance, said, we found undesirable elements in the Nigerian police force. And I think I've heard this afternoon, somebody say, we don't even know the kind of people who join the police force. That is a recurring issue. So the question is, how do we address it? Particularly now that the PSC and the police force is trying to find out who is more powerful in terms of recruiting 10,000 police officers, of all the problems we have now. So can we begin from what we know? We know there's been several commissions. They've done good work. They have reports somewhere. can we look at those reports and take steps to begin implementation? Most times, our problem is, I'm very excited about the new Police Act, but I'm very agnostic about what we do with it. Because you can have a brilliant law that ends up on the pages. Yeah? There are lots of interesting things in the new Police Act. The idea that the office of the Inspector General of Police is now tenured, I think is great. So if you're appointed IG, you have 4 years, you can decide to make or mar your own tenure. That's a possibility. But even on that point alone, you've got to go beyond just tenure. What is the appointment process? Can we have a public process for appointing the Inspector General of Police? Kenya had a whole new process where they interviewed the DPP on live TV. They interviewed candidates for the Chief Justice of Kenya on live TV. What that does is it provides an opportunity for a Gloria, for any of the colleagues in the studio, for a Stanley, if you think you know this person and is not fit and proper to be the Inspector General of Police, I should be able to come out and say no. So for instance, this guy has a history of drug use. We can't trust him with power. We can't trust him with arms. We should, because policing is civilian, it's not military. Sometimes we miss it when people call you bloody civilian. Policing is civilian. So the public has got to have a major stake in determining who leads the police. Number two, our police is too centralized. You have an institution with over 300,000 people managed by one person in Abuja. Excuse me. I've been to police stations in Kogi and in Edo State where essentially police officers are saying we don't even have enough. Somebody else made that point. We don't have enough money to fuel our cars. One of them showed me. He said the fence to this place now, this fence you are looking at, I say yes. He said, I found money to build it. Yeah? You see the patrol cars there? We have to find money to fuel them. So how can we have a system where you need to do something in my village, several thousand kilometers away in the southeast? You need to wait for Abuja to approve that. In a country that calls itself federal. So you ask yourself, what kind of federation are we running? So that over-centralization has got to be dealt with in some way. We've got to make policing a very public and a very civilian-led thing. The Police Service Commission is civilian oversight of the police. But what do we have? All the chairpersons of the Police Service Commission since Simeon Okeke have been retired police officers. That messes up the concept of Police Service Commission, which, by the way, we copied from Kenya and South Africa. Go to those places, you won't find a retired police officer leading the civilian oversight institution of the police. No, it never happens. Only in Nigeria. Yeah? And, whether we like it or not, your average police officer, whether in uniform or out of uniform, believes that his constituency is the police force. So it's difficult to get such people to oversight the police. You've got to find people who have no relation with the police to go get the job done. So we take these things and we just, we misapply them. We like collecting concepts from everywhere. It's like going to international meetings and signing up to agreements. We come back and we treat it anyhow we like. That's a big problem we've got to address.
I'll take you up on the issue of not having a retired police officer lead police service reform. So who is supposed to then lead it if the person doesn't understand how the police service works?
No. Now, what I said is the Police Service Commission is civilian oversight of the police. Now, the tradition, because these things are not, we didn't manufacture anything. If you go check, you can Google as I speak. Kenya has got I think it's called IPOA or something in Kenya. South Africa has got the same thing. It is always led by civil. And the reason is simple. The average police officer owes allegiance to the police institution. There are exceptions. That's why I said the average. So, and I have personal experience, by the way, of essentially reporting. I remember confronting a former chair of the Police Service Commission. I wrote a petition on behalf of a couple of people to the Police Service Commission because the police institution itself could not address the challenge. And the Police Service Commission simply minuted that petition back to the police force. Now, if you have somebody who doesn't think they owe an allegiance to the police, who doesn't think that their primary constituency is the police force, the tendency that they will do their role as civilian oversight of the police goes higher than, it's easy. Go check the records of Police Service Commission when Simeon Okeke was chair and afterwards. Compare for yourself. It's very easy to see. So there's enough, empirical evidence to say that if you want to deal, it's not just the police. It's not just the police. Any institution that has the capacity to use arms, that has the capacity to take lives, for want of a better expression, you've got to find people, and there are lots of people who are not retired police officers who can do this job. So many of them out there. We've got to get back to that.
All right, I think that this is a good time to throw the lines open so that we can have Nigerians join in this conversation. And of course, friends of Nigeria, we also hope that DIG Godwin Chijoke Nwobodo will join us at some point, because this question around drug use and the Nigerian police is so vital, we need to treat it. To call us in, you dial the number 070-4623-1510. The number again, 070-4623-1510. If you just joined us, we are discussing SARS, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, and criminal justice in Nigeria. There's been the argument for the scrapping of SARS, and this afternoon we are trying to have that expanded conversation from a more informed approach on whether or not to scrap SARS, and if not, what reforms can be done. After all, this is our country and we've got to find solutions. Number again, 070-4623-1510. And you can send us any message that you would like to on any of our social media handles, on Instagram at HOJ Radio TV, on Facebook at HOJ Radio TV. You can also send us an email, hojradiotv, one word, at houseofjusticeng.com. Number again, 070-4623-1510. All right, before we get to take the calls that will come in, let's cast our vote now. SARS, to scrap or not to scrap?
Not to scrap, because you can't throw away the baby with the bathwater.
Okay. Benga, SARS, to scrap or not to scrap?
Well, for me, SARS as overstay its welcome, so we need to end SARS now.
Stanley, are you there?
Yes.
All right. How do you vote? Do we scrap SARS? Do we retain SARS?
That's a complicated question if you ask me. What does scrap SARS mean?
Do we do away with it? Do we retain it?
So if you do away with it, what happens to the personnel who were working under that unit? What happens to them? You fire them or you keep them?
Do they cease from being policemen just because they are not in that unit?
That's what I'm asking. Now, if you are going to retain those people, what does scrap mean? So those guys are still there. They still have their orientation, which is not significantly different from your average police officer, by the way. Yeah? So how does scrapping SARS address the underlying idea that if you want to solve a problem, shoot somebody? Yeah? That's my challenge with whether it's scrap or end or whatever. I think the more pragmatic way of dealing with this is to say, what kind of mechanism would we rather have for dealing with armed robbery, with kidnapping, with whatever else? Because remember I said, and DIG Nwobodo confirmed it, SARS was set up to address a specific problem. Now, there was a debate between you two about how far they've gone with that and all of that. Part of the problem is we have, unfortunately...
Just hold on to that thought. Let's take our first caller. I'm sorry, I'll get back to you on that thought, please. Hello?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
My name is Abubakar.
All right, Abubakar.
Listen to your conversation. It's an interesting one. To start with, voting for retention or scrapping of SARS. I will say that SARS should be retained, but then the policemen should be brought up to speed on how to do their job. Then I was talking to a police officer, I won't want to mention his name. And he said when SARS was set up, there was actually they didn't budget money for welfare. They didn't budget money for running of SARS. What the policemen were doing then was when they engage in shootout with armed robbers, and then they have casualties now. They take the robbers to the hospital and use their own money to treat the robbers. And that was what brought about extortion by men of SARS. Yet having used the money they were supposed to use on themselves to treat armed robbers, they go about extorting money so that they can. So the issue of welfare is very key. They should look into their welfare and they should budget money for the running of that outfit. Then there's also the issue of the caliber of people that are being recruited in the police force. Today you have just anybody join the police force. I remember when President Obasanjo was president, he said there was, at one time I was in Yola prison, I don't remember now, and he was there with this particular boy. And then there was a time he was doing a tour he was in Ogun State and he saw that same person in the police force. He was a policeman and he was shocked. He said the boy was in prison for armed robbery and then he was a policeman. So I think the caliber of people that have been recruited in police force should be looked into. The minimum entry qualification into the Nigerian police force should be a diploma. By so doing, you have policemen who are prospecting, who know what they want. And that's my contribution.
Thank you very much, Abubakar from Abuja, for calling.
Thank you.
Yeah. 070-4623-1510 and 070-3242-6904 are the numbers to call. I think we're going to ensure that we call in DIG at some point if we can't reconnect with him, because it's important for us to think through the way forward. But in terms of reform, what should the reform we are talking about look like? Stanley, you were on that point.
Yeah, I mean, whatever we want to do to SARS has got to be research backed. So, I mean, it's clear to everybody, even to the DIG and every police officer who wishes to stand by the truth, that there's a perception, at the very least, there's a perception that SARS violates rights. I think we can't have an argument about that. There's a perception, and you can say, oh, it's just perception. But the truth is, in this business, perception is everything. So you've got to ask yourself, why is it that this perception exists? What is it about all these videos we see? Those officers who have been named, those officers who have been said to have carried out these violations, how do you deal with them? You know what's troubling for me? So in the last 5 years, we banned SARS 4 times, right? And every time they return. In fact, I saw a video today that seemed to suggest that SARS did something in Lagos, just today. So you ask yourself, if you have a ban from the very highest levels of government, yeah, and that institution continues to operate, doesn't that tell you something? So we've got to be serious about whether we want to fix this or we don't want to fix it. Fixing it, in my view, is not just about ending it or scrapping it, or it is getting to the roots. Why are they the way they are? What is it about the oversight institutions that makes it possible for people to say, I will shoot you and nothing will happen? What is it about accountability? Now, when you punish erring police officers, who knows about it? Because it's not enough to punish them. Who knows about it? What is the communication between the institution and the public? Remember, when I started out, I said the biggest challenge is a breakdown of public trust. So the question is, how do you rebuild this public trust? You've got to get back to engaging the public. You've got to get back to communicating with the public. You've got to get back to assuring the public. You've got to get back to punishing erring officers and making the punishment very public. You've got to get back to creating very high incentives for people to violate rights. Because if the incentive is right, more people will stay within the law. If the incentive is so low, people will violate the law and tell you to go and report. And that's the other thing. You've got to build the confidence of the average Nigerian to see the police as an ally rather than a foe. The average Nigerian looks at the police officer, even a kid, looks at the police officer as enemy. That shouldn't be the case. You can't do policing if that is the perception.
Oh, wow. Well, let's see if we can take more calls. 07046231510 and 07032426904. And you can send your comments to our social media, any of our social media handles, I beg your pardon, at HOJ Radio TV Facebook, at HOJ Radio TV Twitter, and at HOJ Radio TV Instagram. You can also send us an email at hojradiotv@houseofjusticeng.com. We're happy to take your comments even after the lines are tossed, because we need to think through how to reform the Nigerian police force, especially SARS, which is now in the spotlight because many Nigerians feel that there have been a lot of violations from that unit. Now, let's go to what reform should look like so that we're not just speaking to problems, but moving to solutions. How do we go, Benga?
Well, the first thing first is there should be sincerity of purpose in terms of reform, because in Nigeria we're not aliens to reforms. There are reforms in every sector, but the sincerity of purpose in which we determine both the police, the authority, and even the citizens on what kind of policing or how effective we want our police system to be. And so particularly with the emphasis on the behavioral makeup or the behavioral management of police personnel. It is very, very key. Most of the police management needs to move from paramilitary style of management to what we call the behavioral management style of policing. What do I mean by that? We need to be sure that, okay, these guys have been given what is the discipline? How do they discipline them? The way, how civil are they in the conduct of their activity? Then how do they call offenders to justice? And then, even starting from interviewing a suspect or an offender, how transparent are they? And then the quality of service, how do they do that? There's a particular story I like to share before the program's end comes to an end. I've been privy to the uncivilization or the brutalities of police, especially special anti-robbery squad called Sars. There's a popular musician in Lagos, and what happened was he was giving. If you know the metro life in Lagos very well, they have parties every weekend before the corona, pre-COVID. And this guy, as I'm talking to you, this guy cannot see again. He's blind. Wow. He can see before. And the guy sings. So what happens? They go to one of these party, and someone had stolen, someone had dropped, according to the story from the police, and a phone, a BlackBerry phone, then was stolen, part of the robbery equipment or things that were stolen at the robbery scene. And then the guy gave the phone to his girlfriend or so somehow. And then when they came to the party where they sing, and if you're private, if you know how these Lagos things work, people begin to sing and people bring out money in their pocket and be spraying the musician. And this guy was singing. After the guy has spent his money, so he now has a phone. So he removes the SIM card on the phone and spray his phone with the musician. After spraying the phone, the musician took the phone, normally, and he was using it. So by and large, the phone was tracked, and it was tracked to the musician. And this guy was taken from Lagos to Abuja. He was made to lie down and face the sun. As I'm talking to you, this guy cannot see again. I wasn't a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, so I didn't know how the case went. Now, first of all, how do they conduct their investigations? What are the rights of an accused person when you're conducting your investigation? And I'm not sure that guy was charged to court before he was disabled. And he shouldn't have been tortured. It was a phone. I don't know whether that was a killing at the sense of the whatever it is that was done. But my question is, how thorough was the investigations? Was there a it said in the Constitution that nobody should write a statement without the help of a legal counsel. In fact, they will tell you have a right to an attorney. If you can't hire one, the state will get one for you. I don't know how many states do hire for people. All you say is they entrust people to write statements and all of that. So I don't know how that story ends, but my interest is the guy lost his sight. The guy lost his sight. I wasn't sure whether I wasn't part of the case. I didn't investigate whether the story of, but that was what police said. That was what was said on the other side. He kept saying this phone was given. He's a musician. This phone was given to me while I was singing, but he can't find. You know how party is, and then people come around and sing. What are the forensic facility that we have to know the number of fingerprints on that phone to ascertain how that phone has been, how that phone has been transferred from hands to hands in recent time? Now, whatever it can be done, that young man cannot have his sight back again. So reforms, we're talking about reform. We need to move from that paramilitary mode of management to also take a look at, we're teaching towards community policing. And when we do that, everybody will hold responsibility. So reforms has to be holistic. When we are ready, they should do it the way and manner it will gain public trust. Thank you.
All right, Shehu, reforms.
Well, I think like everybody mentioned, we need to go back to the root. And if we are talking about reforming the police institution, 2 to 3 things come to my mind. One is funding of that organization. You cannot reform that organization without improving on the funding, without adequate funding. If you don't fund the police organization, no matter what you do, it's just like a makeup. After a few hours, it will wear down again. So you need to fund that organization. There is no doubt about it. And then secondly, we need to look at the welfare of the officers of that organization. How do they live? Where do they live? What do they take home? how do their kids, children, dependents, how do they fare? What are you giving them at the end of the month? Will it be enough to take care of their family, their barracks? How are they? Do they even have enough barracks? We need to look at all of these things.
So
In
are
the
you
whole of
saying
Kaduna,
that these issues around welfare, housing, salary, living conditions are reasons why the police are acting in the manner in which they are acting that undermines public confidence?
very well, because like I said earlier, all of these things touch on their psychology. He wakes up in the morning, there is no food to eat at home, and then he gets to the office, and then there's a case before him, and then somebody is desperate. You want to tell me that he will not try to extort and take it home for his family to feed?
Yeah, but there are people who are hungry too, but who do not extort. How do we
Justify that.
justify that?
So, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but what I'm saying is, when you solve that part of their problem, you will make that thing less enticing to them. You know? For example, I can afford 100 naira, and then I am my duty post, and then you come and then you give me 100 naira. I mean, I'll just look at it and say, no, why will I take your 100 naira? What will it add to me? You know. So and if you know that you cannot come and bribe me in my own unit, I mean, there are limits to which things can be done.
Shehul, not to belabor the point, but just to raise this as something to ponder on as you think through the thoughts on reform. If this is about money, you know that Sani Abacha was the head of state, and yet we are still recovering the loot. Literally, to put it in clear, simple terms, we're still getting back the money that he stole the country blind. Based on the reports that we're having. So if this is about money, how is it that someone like General Abacha will still be speaking to us from the grave by sending us money?
You see, we have to distinguish these things a little. There are those that steal for pleasure, and then there are those that steal because they needed to meet certain ends. If you take care of this problem, I'm not saying that the issue of corruption will become extinct within the institution. No, but then you get to curtail it to a large extent. When they wake up in the morning, the first thing, if you go on the road, if you meet the police at checkpoints and other places, your boys want to take water. Your boys, they will always hang around these issues to say they want you to give them this or they want you to give them that. Now, give them those things legally and see, okay, what would they hang on to now say they want to collect this or collect that?
All right, we're running out of time. We should hear from Stanley as we try to wrap up. Stanley, please.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder if we are not part of the problem. So you ask yourself, what's the percentage of police officers on so-called VIP protection duties compared to the rest of the number of police officers dedicated to the rest of us? So the bigger, the more powerful you get in Nigeria, the more you're interested in how to take care of yourself. That's part of the problem. But there are other questions we've got to ask. Not too many people have asked ordinary Nigerians, what kind of police do you want? Don't forget, this police predates independence. And policing under colonial rule was an occupying force. It was designed to crush everything in its path. Has that changed a lot? I doubt very much. So we've got to ask fundamental questions. What do we want in a police force?
I think
How
it's to answer that
yeah?
question, Stanley, as you try to round up. Nigerians need a police force that they can trust. So how do we get
Human
that kind
rights.
of police force? A police force that respects their
Human.
rights and, you know, that does its own duty. So how do we get that?
Create the incentives for them to do it. Simple. Create the incentives for people to do the right thing. Everything rises and falls on your incentives. If a police officer knows that when they violate me, for whatever reason, they are going to get punished, they know for a fact, they will think twice. Is that it won't necessarily stop it, but they will think twice before they do whatever they need to do to me. They are going to be very careful about that. Secondly, think about the structure of the police. I made the point earlier. You can't have a 305,000 or more strong police force run from Abuja in such a way that, you know, there are lots of things you want done in a police station that cannot be done unless they hear from Abuja. You can't have a system where the governors have no stake in the policing of their states, even though they are called chief security officers. Yeah, you've got to have that difficult conversation about, do Nigerians actually want, in a federal state, a centralized police structure? Do they want police structures at their state levels or at their local government levels? It's a difficult conversation, but we've got to try and have it. So create incentives, try and decentralize this structure. It's too, you know, it's too.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm afraid that we're out of time and we would have to call it a day at this point. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Stanley Ibe, for joining me on House of Justice. And thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you also, Mr. Benga Oba, for being with me on House of Justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm also grateful to Shehu Sani, the public affairs analyst and lawyer, for being with me on House of Justice. Thank you, Shehu.
It's my pleasure.
We lost TIG Godwin Chijioke Nwobodo along the line, but he was up on this discussion earlier on to discuss the issue around police reform. And so I'd like to send my thanks to him for joining us on this episode. So Nigerians, you can still go up online at HOJ Radio TV to vote on whether to end SARS or not to end SARS, and also to make your suggestions on reforms, because we cannot just complain. We must find a way forward. This is the point and the note in which the rubber meets the road, as we call it today on House of Justice. I'll be back with you next week, Thursday. And until then, my name is Gloria Ballason, urging you to insist on the force of law and not the law of force. Bye for now.
It's the House of Justice.